Howdy everyone, and welcome back to part 2 of the podcast where we talk about our early experiences of getting involved with video games from a young age, where we talk about all of the consoles that first got us involved. So we are just going to continue on with our journey, and we will explain more about the games and the consoles that we grew up playing in our younger years. And we will be sharing all of our experiences and memories with all of you. So make sure to stick around, as I'm sure there'll be a lot of elements and stories that you can relate to. So we hope you enjoy. So let's get back into the conversation.
Sonic for the Master System. Now, we all remember that.
Yeah.
Enjoyed it. But the best memories that I had from it, and it didn't really involve us at the time, but as time went on, it did. Because it got very competitive. Because back home in our house, we had the Master System Sonic, who jumped in and ruined our buzz. Only me out for that.
We did.
And trying to get him off the second computer, Sonic, and he played and played and played. And he was hell bent on getting high scores or trying to complete the game without losing his life, and this and that. And we'd walk and say, "Daddy, get out, close the door." And this would go on and on. And it got to a stage then that he'd be playing and playing for hours, and we'd be sitting behind him, waiting for a game that was never going to come.
I remember my mum telling me a story one time that she had to come down to him at 5 o'clock in the morning. She's like, "You're still playing, will you go to bloody bed?"
He's probably into work the next day too.
Yeah.
And he was getting, I don't know, whatever score. So whenever he went to work, we got the chance to play it, and I always wanted then to compete against him and try and beat his score.
Couldn't beat it. I still can't. I still didn't have a better.
Diggs, I think you did.
The golf.
Golf, yeah.
I beat his best score, yeah.
Yeah, but not in Sonic. Nobody better than Sonic.
Couldn't beat him in Sonic whatsoever. I tried and died that many times. It was just, give up.
I did manage to finish the game without losing a life. I was able to do that, but I couldn't beat his score because he was so fast at getting through the levels. He could do it 10 times quicker than I could.
So no wonder he had the controller was glued to his hand. Nobody else could get it. His son was Daddy.
He was secretly training.
Yeah, he was. Daddy, can I ever go?
He sent
where you got it from.
Yeah, and
he is right.
That's why he used to send us to bed early on the weeknights.
6 o'clock, Daddy. It's only 6 o'clock.
And you think, back in the day, you think it'd be clever, right? I go to bed at 9 o'clock. I wake up at about 2 o'clock in the morning, sleep down and play it. They're still down playing it.
Yeah. As you said, 5 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
Probably at work the next day too.
I'd say he got about 2 or 3 hours sleep and he was away to work. Yeah. And then when he came home, he got his dinner and he was back on it again.
I remember years later, just even when we bought him the Nintendo Wii for Christmas, about 10, 12 years ago, and he got addicted to the Wii Sports, and he did the exact same thing. You wouldn't see him. He'd come home from work, my mother wouldn't see him. He'd go into the living room and he'd shut the door, and that was it. Nobody'd see him. He'd come home, have his dinner, and that's it. Good luck, I'll see you later.
That's the truth. Yeah. And that was Sonic. Wait till I get to the next one.
Alright, what's the next one?
What was it? Sega World Championship Golf or something?
World Tournament Golf.
World Tournament Golf.
Yeah.
Now, I have to say, I love that.
I think we were all addicted to that one.
Absolutely.
I was hooked on it too.
Diggs, that overview, all you had was a golf ball on the tee, and you just see, when you take your tee shot, and you go again, and the fun we had out of that, it was just unbelievable. And then, as going back to Sonic, the outfit chipped in. He tried and I trying to beat him, and people trying to beat him, he tried to beat us. I get a good score one day, the next day he's got a better score, and I'm doing the same, and then you're doing the same, blah blah. I was just like, it was one of the most fun, or probably the best. It was so simple of a golf game, but to me it was probably the best golf game I've played.
It was probably because there was with the competitiveness of all of us as well, because we were all trying to outdo each other with it.
Yeah. Like nowadays when you have golf games, it's all online. You can do it online if you like, but back in the day you didn't have that.
No.
You know, that kind of way. And then see if you could play. I think you could play 4-player, but if you were playing 4-player, it could take you nearly the whole day to play 4-player.
Yeah.
Like then it goes a day.
Yeah, because you only needed
somebody else, and then it goes to somebody else. And then if you were taking the time taking the shot, go to adjusting your angle and wind or whatever, and go. Yeah. The game could last forever.
Oh, it could, because the best thing about that game was the fact is that you didn't need multiple controllers. You only needed one. Even though you could have like 4 players, you only needed one controller.
Yeah, just pass the controller.
Pass the controller around. Yeah.
Like when you think about those games and that being a multiplayer game, like to this day, right? I know everybody plays multiplayer games online. They can play from their own house, with their mate who's living somewhere else. I don't think you'll ever beat multiplayer where you're shoulder to shoulder with someone.
No, No, definitely not. We're a prime example of that. The amount of laughs and stories and fun that we had over the years, not just with the Master System, but with other consoles. Like the best moments for me personally was when all the lads were all together having a laugh. Just you're in company, instead of a virtual meeting.
You're
having a laugh, but you're also being competitive at the same time because everybody wanted to win.
I was laughing. But somebody you do something stupid and then
you'd laugh your head off.
Yeah.
And then do what happened? 9 times out of 10, probably me. Just say, Smith, you took a shot and
it went into the water or something like that, and everybody started laughing.
And then more likely probably me. I'd be laughing at you. I'd take the next shot.
I do
the same spot as you.
I do remember myself. I'd be a villain. I'd be trying to put you off. I'd be too busy giggling, laughing, and then in the corner, and you used to be telling me to shut up, And I was deliberately doing it just to wind you up because I didn't want you to win.
Yeah.
But even you look like that game, and that wasn't just the only game. I'm just using that as an example because that's the game that kind of got everybody together. But you think of back in the day, that actually what brought people together. I know you still have games now and consoles now that can still do that. Back in the day, that's all we had, and everybody could still play. And the fun that we had, you 2, 3, 4 people in the room playing the same game, and the laughs and the fun. It was just brilliant.
Good times, great times actually. It didn't even have to be multiplayer. Like how many times did we all camp in one room and one person was playing a game and the others were just watching?
We were just watching,
just intrigued.
Just watched. And it was more or less, see when you're watching the game, there might be something that
you'd pick up that the other person missed.
Somebody would see something on the screen.
And then you go back and get it, or you could do it, and same vice versa. You know what I mean? And
if you were stuck in a puzzle, somebody might click what it is.
It's like we were at the back, we were all like co-pilots. Do that kind of way.
And then you had the ones laughing at you because you couldn't solve it.
Yeah, that was yours with me.
No, but you remember you'd have the other ones in the background laughing at you. Oh, rubbish at that game.
Yeah, that was yours with me.
Yeah. They're just unbelievable times, like you're talking like before you were a teenager or anything like that, you were still like in primary school and you were just playing games, and that was it, like a group of 4 or 5 of us in one room having a laugh, laughing at the stupid mistakes someone would make or helping one another. It was just unreal. It was brilliant.
But the best part about it is it was brilliant, but there was no seriousness about it. It was just fun. You played the game for fun, and that was the complete enjoyment. Right, if things didn't go your way, you tried again. But even then, for talk's sake, we used to take turns in games. Like I can't think of a game offhand, but just say one game, and we were playing it, and say there could be 4 of us in the room. Right, it's your turn to play. See how far you get. Then you get so far, but then the person behind you that's next, he's watching and going, right, I know what to do now, and he
I know what to do next. And you'll be sitting at the end of the queue waiting, itching for your go.
Waiting for your go, because it's saying, right, I've seen exactly what they've done, I can get that a little bit further. And that's kind of the way it was. You know what I mean? It was
Sonic was a good do you remember like you get a go in Sonic, or maybe not even Sonic, but when you think of the Mario Brother games and things like that, everybody got one life, and if you died, pass the remote or the controller to the next
I think we played games like that too, where say if there's 4 players and say Sonic or somebody or whatever game, you 4 lives, right? Everybody has 1 life. If you die, that's it, next person goes.
All I remember is I used to be sitting there itching, waiting for everybody to lose a life so I could get back on it again. I had no patience.
You weren't itching, you were scratching.
You invented the phrase "one more game."
I pretty much did.
Just one more game, just one more.
Yeah.
I had to get a second.
You said that an hour ago.
Oh, I kid you not, like I like, you know me, like growing up, I was always the quiet one. Like I was the eldest of all of the boys, like, and I was always the quiet one. But see, when I got the computer, I became a demon. I caused all the rows in the house.
I remember.
Yeah, and that was the only time I ever caused rows in the house growing up, was because I would not let anybody play the computer because I wanted it all for myself.
It was a drug to him.
Yeah, it was. It was a drug. I was addicted.
A drug to him.
I was addicted to it. I just could not get enough of it. I couldn't breathe or sleep without thinking that all I wanted to do was just play the computer. And I was like that. I was like that for a very long time. Still like that.
I remember when
an hour later he'd be getting up again to play it again. You know,
I know, yeah.
It was just, yeah.
I was a devil. I used to get up there early in the morning before the boys would get up because I knew they'd all sleep.
I know,
snoring their heads off. I remember quietly putting the plug into the wall, hoping they wouldn't hear me.
He was the one that they got the computer.
Video game ninja.
I became a master. Yeah. I was like Shinobi.
Yeah.
Shinobi, I remember that game.
I always remember like the only time you'd ever get like rowdy playing games. Because I always remember the boys, the younger ones, like if you died on the 11, they'd be like, you're crap at that game.
Yeah.
And you would go
freak.
mental.
Yeah.
Chase them out of the room.
Yeah.
The boys knew how to push your buttons.
Yeah.
They were playing you.
Because that's the thing, I was so competitive when it came to playing games back then that I just wanted to win at all costs. I would not give in until I got what I wanted. And the boys could see that, and they just
vision.
there was only one way I was looking, and that was at the computer screen. There was nothing else. Nothing else mattered outside of that for me. I didn't care about anything else. Once I played the computer, I was happy. That was it. And I was like that for a very, very long time. But when I was in my zone, the boys would be shouting at me. I wouldn't even hear it.
Yeah.
It's like they didn't even exist once I was in my zone.
It was more or less like when you need to be playing the computer. It was like you could walk in front of them and put your hand out in front of them and go up and down, and the eyes still would not blink.
Yeah, that's how I always remember that. It was like blink, wasn't it?
It was like this place in a trance.
I was completely obsessed.
You were like, you could always tell, right? There'd be no blinking, and then suddenly he'd go from like a relaxed seating position to like, elbows on the knees.
I had to get really.
I'm getting into this.
I used to
Once
go.
he changed position, you knew there was something happening.
I remember my mum and dad coming in and giving it hell to me because I used to get so into it to a point that I would move edge closer to the TV all the time. And I remember my folks used to kill me.
I remember that.
They used to be telling me, Peter, get away from that computer, get away from that TV. You're too close to it. And I was just like, it's like if there was a way that you could go into that digital world, like where you jump into the TV, I would have bloody jumped into it. I was at a different level, so I was like, it just
You're on a different planet.
I wouldn't mind, right? To give you a quick story, like I actually was playing a couple of games, Master System games. I was working on a couple of projects there recently with all the other stuff that I'm doing, and I actually went back and played a couple of those Master System games, and I'm like, and I played a load of racing games, and some of them I could play and it was like really good, but then there was other ones I was playing, and I remember them back in the day. They were okay, but they were really hard, and I was like, how the hell did I play this back in the day? I can't even play it now. How was I able to finish them or to get as far as I got back in the day? Because I was literally playing it for like 10 minutes and I was like, I'm done, I'm not playing it anymore. But then I suppose I'm older and wiser now. Well, I wouldn't say wiser,
wiser. I don't know, but older, but that's the only games we had.
I really don't know how I was able to play games back then, to have that much tunnel vision that I had and to have that much dedication to them. I couldn't do it now, and I do.
Your tolerance levels as a kid is much higher.
Because now I couldn't do it. I do enjoy me games. I have a cut-off point now. I'm just like, no.
Don't let him He's not fooling me.
I learned very quickly with Batman Arkham Asylum. That was the last time I allowed the game to really drive me mad, and after that, I was like, that's a discussion for a different day.
That almost brought me to break a controller. The only ever time that I was the same.
Smash it. The funny thing is, as competitive as it was, I never ever got angry to a point where I threw a controller at the wall. I never did that. But that game nearly brought and I said never again, because I've realised now, obviously it is because you get older. If a game drives you that crazy and it's not enjoyable, and you have to know when to walk away. That's the one thing I've learned. You have to know when to walk away.
That's why I don't play Call of Duty
I don't play a lot of online games anymore. And if I do, I only play like with yourselves or like say the boys or whatever. Like, but that's about as far as I go.
It's too competitive.
You're not
allowed to be bad.
No.
You're kicked out of the party.
We've all witnessed that.
See, I love with the old games. Obviously, I had that competitive nature, but nowadays, I still know if I get really into a game, you know yourself, even just to kind of go off topic a little bit, when you were playing Elden Ring over the last while, when you get into a game, that's it, you're hooked, and your competitive nature kicks in, and you want to finish it. That's fine.
Exactly.
But, and you don't mind that. But I think that's only if a game really draws you in. But I find now a game has to draw me in to want to actually finish it, to want to fit, And I was like that back then, the Master System days as well. But nowadays, I'm like, no, I kind of know my cut-off point. I generally just like to play games casually, and plus I do play like a lot of retro games because of the other content they do and the other stuff. But at the same time, I'm like, I just know when enough's enough. I'm just like, nah, I'm done. Unless the game really appeals to me, I just won't. I'll play it casually, but I won't take it as seriously as I used to. Which,
I'll tell you a home truth, and this is a fact, and this is what every one of us, right? Right, you look at nowadays where a game it pee off or whatever, and I mean you're raging, you nearly fire the controller against the couch or not to break it or whatever it is, or you do break it, blah blah. Back in the day, a game pee off, but see when you're finished, what would you do? You'd put the controller back down right beside the computer, very gently, not to break
that wasn't going to be replaced.
You knew that wasn't not going to be replaced. If you break that there was no Game and Rage. We wouldn't have called it Game and Rage. You put the controller back where it was, and you say, right, I'll try it again tomorrow, and that was it.
I do remember now, I wasn't as easily able to just bring myself away from it. I remember my mum and dad, and sometimes even yous would have to come in and say, Peter, right, enough's enough, because that was the only way to get me away from it. Because if I would have sat and kept playing,
this is like, this is like confessions of an addict.
It wasn't enough, it's enough. Will you give somebody else a game?
But I do agree with that, Steve-O. Like, there was times even when I will admit that I had to take a step back. And it was hard for me to do it, but I knew myself I was being defeated by the game. I was like, right, enough. But you know yourself, like, when you come back to playing a game after, you find it really frustrating, and you always find the first couple of tries at something is always your best attempt at it. And if you don't get it if you don't get it within your first couple of tries, that's it. You may forget about it.
With that. Your concentration levels are at the highest.
And then when you start to get more agitated, then you make more mistakes. So that's what I always found. So so that's what I found.
Your composure goes out the window.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So you still never broke the Master System controller though of all the games you had?
No, I didn't. No. I wasn't like I was bad, but I did respect what I had. That was the thing. Like, I kind of way, because like I said, you knew you were never getting another one. Like, and sure, there was times like if we did have a row, sure, you remember the folks that packed the computer away on us for a couple of weeks. You weren't getting it.
I remember that.
Yeah, so you learned your lesson very quickly. So you did.
Yeah, funny enough, I got inadvertently punished as well. Do you not remember that?
You did.
Yous were fighting over something. I wasn't even in the house at the time, but yous had my PlayStation multi-tap and my games, and you annoyed your mum and dad to a point where yous were fighting over games and control, whatever. That they just grabbed everything and locked it away in the cupboard.
Oh, I do remember that. My dad.
For months I was like, where the hell did I put my multi-tap?
Yeah.
Like, where is it? Like, I swore I had another controller.
I do remember that. My dad came in one day and he told us to knock everything off. We had a big row over something. I can't remember what it was, and something happened.
The boys were fighting.
The boys were fighting, and I don't even think it was me or Steve-O. I think it was the rest of them. And
I was probably Steve-O. He was always in the middle of it all.
Yeah. Yeah.
I always remember
with his big spoon stirring.
Yeah.
I always remember the Friday, Monday to Thursday. No, once a week school, you weren't allowed computer. So you seen the sweat pissing out of Peter the whole time.
Withdrawal symptoms.
Honestly,
I had homework done 6 o'clock. We got a computer, and then it was taken off us then that Sunday night.
Yeah.
So by the Friday to the Sunday, I'd say we probably got about 2 goals each over that whole weekend, or every weekend, because the other fella would have it. I'm not wrong.
No comment to see.
Yeah, I'm not wrong.
Your silence is deafening.
Yeah. I can't lie, so yeah. I'm not a very good liar.
So let's move on to Peter now. Like, so what's your first gaming experience?
That's to say, like, a lot of it is even tied into what we've just been discussing as well. If I go back to my very first experience, like, it is an Amstrad of some sort from what I do remember. Now I think I was about 5. Now we were only after moving in across the road from you. We were there about a year and a half, and I was 5, I think, at the time. And all I remember was the place where my dad used to work. He used to work in the warehouse down the Dublin Road, and they used to do the old Normanda TVs. Do you remember them? But they used to also sell the Amstrad computers as well, and they used to stock them in the warehouses. Now, I don't know if it was the 464 one that you had, but it was definitely the earlier models. All I do remember.
Do you remember the colour of it? Was
I
it
do.
black?
I do remember it being black, but the
that
screen
was probably CPC.
But the screen was in colour. I do remember the screen being in colour because
some models of the CPC was in colour, I think.
And I remember my dad I didn't see him really. Well, he was setting it up, but I remember all I could hear was all these weird sound effects, and I knew he wasn't watching TV because they packed us off to bed, and this was a usual thing. We were in bed by about 8 o'clock because he'd always had like school the next day or vice versa. But then around 10:30, 11 o'clock, you'd always hear these weird sound effects, and I woke up and I could hear something. I was like, that doesn't sound right. What's going on? And of course, being young and curious, you were wanting to know, and especially anything that was like that with sounds and that, straight away I was like, oh, what's that? And I remember I was too afraid of my dad, so I wouldn't go downstairs because I'd be afraid of him giving out to me. So I'd always go to my mum, because my mum was the soft spot in our house growing up, and I would sit at the top of the stairs. Now, mind you, all the boys were in bed asleep, and I'd always kind of like try and call at my mum, was like, mom. And then this would go on for about 10 minutes, and then eventually my mother would come out, or she'd be doing cleaning, or she'd be in the kitchen, or she'd be down doing something, and eventually then she would come in and she'd be like, why aren't you in bed? And she's like, what's going on down there? That was always the question. What's going on? And she wouldn't. My mum would try to fob it off. She'd just go back to bed. I was like, no, there's something going on. What's going on? And she's like, where's Dad? What's he doing? And then eventually my mother would give in, and she'd be just like, oh, he's just messing with something. I was like, oh, can I see? And she wouldn't at first, and then eventually my mum would always give in, and eventually she did. And I would nearly expect my dad to be giving out, why aren't you in bed? But no, he was like, that's exactly what he said. He was like, why aren't you in bed? It'd nearly be always telling, no, get back up to bed. And no, he actually, and my mum would say, I'll just let him sit for a few minutes because he wants to know. And then I seen him setting stuff up, and I remember sitting on the couch with him. He had me sitting beside him or sitting on his knee, and all I remember was I seen a big keyboard, I seen this wee monitor, he was trying to play a game, and I do remember there was a tape deck. I can't remember if the tape deck was separate or there was a couple of different versions. There was one, I think the tape deck was actually in the keyboard, something like what you had, but I do remember it being black and the keyboard being black. But I do remember all of the buttons, like the major keys, like the control, shift, alt, enter, escape, were all different colours. Do you remember? They were all like they would always be like red, green, blue.
That was that specific one.
They'd all, and I remember the colours of the keyboard always just all being different types of colours. I can't remember exactly which one was which, but they were all different colours. And
the escape key was red. The return key I think was blue, and like control and shift and stuff was green, if I remember correctly.
And sure, I was totally just in awe of it. All I wanted to do, like with me, I was 5, I think it was 5, nearly 6, and sure, all I wanted to do was just push the buttons. I'd never seen a computer in my life before that. I didn't even know what it was.
Toy, right?
And all I remember is that I seen my dad playing this game, like looking at the sound effects, and I can't remember exactly what it was he was trying to do, but all I remember was that every so often an ambulance would come along, lift him out and put him in the back of the ambulance, and the ambulance zipped off.
What game was that?
I can't remember what game it was.
That's the same ambulance I should have fucking called you in years to come when you couldn't get you off the Master System or PlayStation.
I think you would need more than an ambulance because I was glued to the chair.
Just come back earlier on. That was a story that I said I'd leave you to speak, because I said you remember that clear as day. Going down and doing all that stuff.
I remember a lot of it.
How old were you?
I was about 5. Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah. I can still remember a lot of that stuff. That's the crazy thing. So
sitting on your papa's knee.
Yeah. Because I remember then, as the months went on, what used to happen is then eventually you would come down as well, because you'd wake up and the two of us would be sitting at the top of the stairs doing the same thing again, and my mum was like, well, let's go to bed. And eventually then there was, I don't remember, I
was just following suit.
I do remember, because there was at one point, I remember there was one particular night that you were there with me as well, and mum and dad led us both into the sitting room, and even mum told me the story. Your dad had you sitting, you on one knee and Steve-O on the other, and the two of you just bemused at him playing this game that he was playing on the Amstrad, and the two of you wanted to go, but you didn't know what to do. You only just wanted wanted to do was just press the buttons. So yeah, it's like that was my earliest experience ever with a computer. So it was like, but that was fun, like, it's just because it was so innocent as well, like you didn't know any better. But I knew when I look back now, and especially like being the old man that I am now, I think I kind of even knew then, was like, oh, computers are going to be, I was addicted to them even from then, even though I was very, very young and I didn't really know, but I knew that when I seen it, I just wanted it, and that was it. And I think from then, it's sometimes I think you just kind of know. It might seem weird, but it's kind of hard to explain. Moving forward then with my first console then was the Master System, funny enough, the same as Steve-O's. And it was the same. I remember the very first time I ever played the Master System was actually round at a friend's house that was actually in my class in primary school, and he had a Master System. Now, he had the Master System 1. Now, he didn't have any cartridge games, but he had a couple of games that were built into the computer, and he was lucky enough that he had 3 games built into the computer. There was 2 games. There was Safari Hunt and there was Hang On, the bike game. But I didn't realise until a couple of months later that he actually had a hidden game in it. It was like you hold, like you did a cheat code, like you hold up and the 2 buttons, and you go into a game like it was like you played as like a snail going around a maze. It was like, I can't remember, what was it called? Snail Trail or something like that. I think that might have been it. But I do remember the very first game I ever played on the Master System was Hang On, because I became obsessed with the bike, anything with racing. I was just like, because even me going back when I was a kid, I loved cars. I loved playing with wee toy dinky cars and stuff like that. So to get to see like something like playing like with a racing game on the screen, I know you were playing as a bike, but sure, I was obsessed with it, hearing all those sounds, and every time you hit a cone or you crash or the bike would just explode, and you were just like, oh, this is cool. But then he had Safari Hunt, that game with the gun, and I was addicted to it because I remember you could read. Now the game was the same, it was endless, but you used to getting scored. You had so many lives, but the levels would transition. You go from, I can't remember one of the levels. There was one like you were in a field, but then there was another one where you were in a jungle, and you'd have like bats and you'd have like monkeys coming out at you as well. So you were shooting everything that moved, and I remember being addicted to that. So you were always kind of swapping between the two, and I just thought it was awesome. And I remember a good few times for a couple of months, I remember I'd always be torturing my friend or my mum, or like, can I go down to such and such house, because that was only, like, you know yourself, that was the only time you had the chance to play a computer.
You had
because
anybody that had a console.
Because back then that was the only way you got to play games. It was just the fact is that it was usually someone that you knew that had one, and if you were fortunate enough to get the chance to play it.
We couldn't afford it back in the day, and then the chance you could get, you were going to take it.
Yeah,
and that was it.
But that went on for them for a couple of years then, and I remember then we did get to play a couple of other computers, like say the Mega Drive in between. And the funny thing is, like when we got our Master System, I was 9. It was about a month or 2 before my 10th birthday, and we all bunched together and got it down in Uri, and we got Sonic the Hedgehog, and we got the Master Games Collection. That was the 3 games on the 1 cartridge, World Soccer, Super Monaco Grand Prix, and Columns. And I was addicted to it. I'll be honest, I love Sonic 1 on the Master System. It's one of my favourite Sonic games, of all time. And I know I played Sonic 2. We had Sonic 2, and I did play years later. Before, when I went to secondary school, I remember getting loaned the 3rd game on a Sonic Chaos, and I'd always wanted to play it, and it was really good. It done a lot of cool things in it that wasn't in other Sonic games that you wouldn't even see, like say on the Mega Drive or whatever. But it wasn't as good as Sonic 1. I thought visually Sonic 1 was the best looking. It was one of the best looking games on the Master System. It had the nicest graphics, really colourful, very bright, and the sound effects, it felt like it was as close to the Mega Drive version as you could get. What I loved so much, and even today I find myself, what appealed to me just as much as playing the games, I remember 99% of game soundtracks. I can remember nearly them all. I used to always kind of like, even when I'd be in school, I'd be daydreaming. I used to get in school because I'd be daydreaming in school, always couldn't wait to play my next game. But I'd be sitting, but I'd be sitting in my head replaying the tunes, the Master System tunes in my head. Some of those games, like Sonic 1, like there was the Green Hill Zone, but there was also one at the Jungle Zone. You remember that one? That's why I was terrible at school, because I had no interest in being in school. I was daydreaming was games, and the game's music more. I love the game's music as much as I love playing the games. Like I remember that Jungle Zone, that was the one where you could actually jump on a log and roll across the water and float on the water, like, to get to different places. But the tune on that level was so catchy. I absolutely loved it. And it was one of those ones that once you got into your head, you couldn't get rid of it, like, and I loved it. And I was addicted to Sonic Sonic for ages, and I loved it as well because you could always be trying to find all the Chaos Emeralds, because it was different than the Mega Drive one where you ended up, how would you put it, the Chaos Emeralds you could only get in the special stages, but in the Master System one you got them throughout the levels you were actually currently in. That was the funny thing. I actually originally played Sonic 1 on the Mega Drive first before I played it on the Master System. I played it about 2 or 3 years beforehand, and I was completely blown away by how good it was. But what happened was, originally when we went to get our Master System, I had tortured my folks for about 2 years. I wanted a Mega Drive, and what happened was I was obsessed with it. And I remember one of the other boys, he had a Mega Drive as well, and I remember he got a loan of the Mega Games 2 collection, and he had Streets of Rage, there was Golden Axe and the Revenge of Shinobi on it, and I remember being blown away by those 3 games, especially Streets of Rage. Now I know people love Golden Axe, I love Golden Axe, but for me Streets of Rage, oh yeah, hell yeah. But I remember becoming obsessed with that so much that all I wanted was that and Sonic the Hedgehog. You know, at this point I'd never played Sonic 2 in my life, I'd only played Sonic 1, and I just wanted Sonic in some shape or form. But we weren't allowed to get one because the Mega Drive was too dear. It was always like about £130 or £150, which was just, we couldn't afford it. And back then, you know yourself, most of us couldn't ever afford stuff like that. So what ended up happening was, the only thing we had enough money for was a Master System, and funny enough, the price that we got it for a great price, and we got it with a great bundle because you got 4 games with it, and we're like, oh hell yeah, this is brilliant. Like, so you got the best of both worlds. You still managed to get Sonic in some shape or form, but you also had 3 other games there that you could play, which was really, really cool. And I think we got 2 controllers with that as well. I think we did, because we had Super Monaco Grand Prix, and we did, because and when we got it, we ended up being able to play, myself and Steve will play World Soccer against each other. Now I was terrible at the football. Steve was able to beat me in it, no problem. It was a clunky thing, but I remember Steve beating me quite a good bit on it. And I think we had 2 controllers on it, so we did. And I didn't play Columns as much. I was never really into the puzzle games as such. I did play it, but I always kind of got bored of them a little bit. But like the rest,
Columns.
More or less I played it because Diafla, he got into it.
Yeah, he got addicted to it. Yeah,
you know what I mean. And that's more or less. Like,
it's funny you should say that, because even when I had the Mega Drive and you got Mega Games 1, which Columns was included, like I always felt like the older siblings that's the game that they gravitated towards. Yeah, it was like puzzle, and I hated Columns. Because you know, like you'd be starting off and there'd be a nice rhythm to it, and you'd be like, oh, I can see where to put that, and then it would start faster and faster, and I'm just like, the only way I could do it was you could pause the game, look at the screen and say, where does that need to go, and do it that, but you'd be just like, for ages, like,
definitely.
It just never. I hated Columns. Never liked it.
Yeah,
it wouldn't have been my go-to game, but it was more the fact is because obviously it was the first time playing in a Master System, but with the Alpha playing it, and not saying he was addicted to it. He was addicted to Sonic more than Columns. But when he was playing it, all he wanted to do was just get the high score. So and he got a high score. It's more or less not rubbing my face, but he wouldn't, obviously back in the day, he wouldn't have called me, well, he still doesn't call me Steve-O, everybody else does. Stephen, I got such and such a score in Columns, and that'd be it. Whenever
in your face.
That's more or less it, do you know what I mean? But he did it in a subtle way. And then I'm like, in my head I'm going, I'd be going on then trying to fucking beat his score.
I do remember that, because when my dad actually got into the Master System, that was the one time when actually all the boys were able to get a go, because I knew when my dad was playing it, my dad wouldn't let me hog it. Because if I tried to hog it, you were getting a slap. That was as simple as that. You know, there was no way out of it. So
it was more or less with the Master System. As the years went on and the older we got, like the other boy, he was still playing it, but he was really good at Sonic. I have to say, there's no question about it. He was brilliant at Sonic, but we had more game time.
Yeah.
Because it's more or less he was letting us play to see. Could we beat his second score? I came close a few times, but no, I couldn't beat it.
He didn't play the racing game Super Monaco Grand Prix as much. That was a bit hard for him.
That wasn't hit.
He did try to play the likes of the soccer, but again, soccer was tough for him. The 3 games he played all the time on the Master System was Sonic 1, Columns, and Sega World Tournament Golf. But talking about Sega World Tournament Golf, like even just moving forward a little, because like I'm trying to think back of all the games we had. Like there was those games, there was World Soccer, Columns, Super Monaco Grand Prix, Sonic 1. Later on, I remember getting Sonic 2. I think we bought it in Dublin again. We bought it in HMV, I think, for about 30 quid. There was one of the trips we went to Dublin, and I remember that was a totally different game. Now, don't get me wrong, I loved it, but I didn't like like it as much as I liked Sonic 1. Sonic 1 on the Master System has always been the best one for me. But I remember getting, like, then got Chuck Rock 2. I remember buying, there was one of those old video game, or not, those old video stores, like, used to rent out the tapes and stuff down the end of Clonbrassil Street years ago. And I remember they used to have bargain bins, and I remember getting the first Wonder Boy game in there for like a tenner, maybe years later.
Where was that in Clonbrassil Street?
It used to be called Rats. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I don't even remember that.
Yeah, and I remember we were just going in there one day because it got to a point where Master System games were starting to get tough to find.
Whereabouts? I'm intrigued now. Whereabouts in Clonbrassil Street?
It was down at the very end. It was actually on the right hand side when you're coming down, but it was nearer the church.
Like, oh, okay, right there, like where the bike shop and that.
Yeah. Well, it was actually down further than that. You know the way when you go past like likes of the bike shop there, and you had to cross over the road. It was down past the church. There was another row of shops down there. Remember, there was a couple of, I think, wee cafes and stuff, and it was there. There was one, an old video shop there, and I remember they used to have a bargain bin. I'm actually, because I bought 2 games in there. One time I bought Wonder Boy, and I remember buying that Alien Syndrome. I remember bought Alien Syndrome a couple of years later, and I think I got it for like £6. And I was getting it for a bargain. I was like, sweet. I remember being addicted to that game, but that game was so hard. Excuse me.
I wasn't a fan of it.
Yeah, but I did eventually finish it, like, you know me. But no, I enjoyed it now. But I remember when I was not long after I got the Master System, one of the hardest games I ever had to play, but it took me a long time to eventually master it, was the Ninja. I remember it was on my 11th birthday, and I got the Ninja for my birthday. And I remember because you had gotten a loan of Sonic 2 that day for the Mega Drive, and you brought over your Mega Drive later that evening, and it was the first time I'd ever played Sonic the Hedgehog 2. And I remember being completely blown away by it. And I loved Sonic 1, and then played Sonic 2, and the fact that you could play a 2-player on it, play it like in a co-op, or play it like doing a race mode where you're racing each other, I thought was awesome. But the soundtrack for me in Sonic 2 is one of the best soundtracks I've ever heard in a video game. I just loved the music in it, yeah. And that was a key moment for me, like. I remember playing the Ninja. The Ninja was so hard, but it actually took me about 2 years to fully finish the Ninja, because in order to finish it, there was 13 levels in it, but there was one hidden level, and you needed to find all the scrolls. The scrolls were hidden, and back then you knew yourself, unless you had a guide or unless someone that knew had finished the game, you were never finishing it, because what would happen was you'd get to the end of the level and you think you'd finished it, and then you'd have to start from level 1 or start from back the courtyard back at level 10 again, and you have to go through the whole thing again, and you just keep going till you lost your lives. The only way you could actually finish the game was when you got all the scrolls. There was like a hidden room that you had to unlock by shooting, I remember, the darts at it. You had to do it in a combination, like 5 darts. It was like 1, 2, 3 or whatever, and you had to do it on a specific stone in the garden, and they would take you into a little secret underground place, and that would be the last level where you fight the last boss.
It's just from memory.
And the thing is, you wouldn't know it until someone told you about it. He finished it. Yeah. And only for that I wouldn't have been able to finish it, because I didn't even know that you had to collect all the scrolls, because there was some of them that were that secret. They were hidden in pillars, and there were certain levels you had to shoot a pillar a couple of times or in a certain sequence in order for the scroll to unlock. But sure, I didn't know, unless you had a magazine. Yeah, unless you had someone there, you were out of luck pretty much. And
it's funny you should say that about guy in school helping you understand the game.
Yeah.
To get further in it. Because that was like, my experience was you learned a lot from the classroom.
Oh, you did. That was your knowledge base for the games that you wanted to finish or that you didn't know too much about. You could guarantee that someone in your classroom knew how to do it or had played it to some degree. You know, like sometimes they'd kind of tell you a few fibs, but at the same time you kind of get the gist of it. But 9 times out of 10 they were honest, because they'd had the similar issues when they were playing games. So they were always, quite helpful. Like, because again, you were just into talking about games. But yeah.
You think about it, like nowadays, like back in the day, that's how we communicated about games. Now the art of conversation was gone, because all you do was Google everything. Back in the day, you traded games, you talked to people and said, right, if you've got the same game as I have, blah blah, how do you get past this? Or if, say for talk's sake, if you got past a certain part, they'd come to you and you would tell them.
And yes, you did the same. Yeah, if you managed to figure something out, they would ask you in the class the next day.
They'd come to you, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and you would show them and tell them what to do, like.
Yeah, and that's the way it was.
And it was all about word of mouth. Word of mouth was the key thing to finish a lot of your games.
That's all we had.
Yeah.
And you know what? It was probably the best thing ever.
Oh, it was, because you got to interact, and that's how you made a lot of friends as well. I found in school, like, because you
made a lot of friends because
because you found something that everyone could relate to. Everyone had the same issue, because you were like, that damn game's driving me mad, you know. So yeah, that was fun. Like there was so many other games. I remember then when I was 11, we got our own first TV for the bedroom. I remember I got it for Christmas, but I also remember getting Space Harrier for the Master System as well, and that game was tough as hell. It took me a few years to finish that as well. It took me a good few years.
Jetpack.
Yeah, but it was cool. It was a really good game, like, and there was 18 levels in it, and I remember trying to even get to that.
I didn't get to 18. I got to close to it.
I remember actually you got to one of the levels before I did. You managed, because you were playing it as much as me at that time, and I remember you really got into it at one point, and you had managed to get further than me.
I loved it.
Yeah, and I do remember you actually getting further than me for a good while in it, and then eventually I was like, no, I have to try it. He's put me to show.
No, you didn't try.
Yeah.
You made it your.
I made it my focus.
To beat me.
Like I said,
if you had to shoot one more fucking bullet than me, that was it.
I was just very competitive back then. But yeah, like we had a load of Masters. I think by the time, say, before we moved on to the next generation consoles, like we had about 30 or 40 games. Like when you think of it back then, for us, we used to save up our pocket money to get all our games. Or say someone, like because there was so many of us, every year or every second year, someone would have a communion or confirmation, and everybody would get a little bit of money, and that's what yourself and the boys would usually bunch together a little bit of your pocket money, and that's what we would do. We bunch whatever money we had to buy a game, or buy maybe two games. So
then I'd call over and play them.
And you would always call over that.
So I benefited too.
Yeah,
I didn't even have to share my communion money.
No, that's it.
Like you think about it was the truth though. Back in the day, like we were close knit together as kids, because we all contributed to one goal.
Yeah, that's it.
You know what I mean? Either to buy a console or to buy a specific game or whatever it was, and we were good at that. You know what I mean?
I remember
it wasn't just, this is my money, I'm going to spend it my way. No, we all
there was
a
load of other games I remember that we had. Like there was Wonder Boy, and I remember there was a couple of other ones. I remember we got that Marvel Madness. That game drove. Remember we were talking about this recently.
I was thinking about that earlier.
Yeah, there was only 6 levels.
You used to do my head in, and I was just watching you playing.
Yeah, because it was so tough. Now me being me, I didn't give in. I did finish it, but
not surprised.
But it took me 12 months to finish that game. But it drove
only
me
12
mental.
Months.
But I remember I had it was like a space shooter game. It was called it was a weird name. It was called Xenon or Xeon 2 or whatever you call it. I think if that is the way you pronounce it is. People can probably correct me if I'm wrong. But all I remember is that you could get loads of upgrades for your ship, where you could shoot at like multiple like lasers and stuff, and you could even shoot from behind you as well at different points. But the gameplay, compared to other like shooting games, the gameplay was very, very slow. So it was. I remember that game was really tough as well. I did manage to finish that. I also do remember a few other games that a few of our friends had. There was one I think called like Submarine Attack or something like that. It was kind of like one of them rail shooters, but you played as a submarine, and that was really cool. There was also another one I had as well. I remember getting it. Actually got cheap in a second hand, so I think I got it in that shop Cassidy's in town. You remember that, Dig?
Yeah.
He used to sell a lot of Master System games in there. He was actually probably the go-to place locally that we were able to get like Master System games. I remember getting one called Shoplifter. You remember that? You were a helicopter, and you had to rescue the prisoners of war. You had to fly around the map trying to avoid like loads of airplanes and stuff.
Shoplifter or Chop Squad?
Shoplifter, because there was a hidden a hidden thing in it, because every so often, depending on certain things you would do, Superman would appear in the game. So you would. Yeah. It was, but apparently it was in the, because this was a port of an arcade version. Apparently it was in all the versions back then that Superman would make an odd appearance here and there. You just see him flying across the sky, he'd zip in and zip out again, and that was it.
You know, now that you say that, I vaguely remember something like that.
Yeah, and I always thought, because we were always trying to play it to see if we get Superman to come to be seen. I do remember doing it. I only remember doing it a couple of times, a handful of times, where I managed to get to see him. Because the music would play. It's a funny theme song would come in when he arrived. The music would change in the level when he come in, and then he'd be there for a couple of seconds and he was gone again. The goal was, there was about 6 levels in the game, and the goal was to rescue as many survivors as you could and get them back to the base, and then that would obviously add to your score. And once you got a certain quota of prisoners prisoners, then you'd complete the level and you go on to the next. And
Do remember the name alright.
yeah.
I do, definitely.
But what was I going to say? Yeah, then I remember I got Streets of Rage 2. Well, even before I got Streets of Rage 2, I remember two of the games I probably played the most that I really enjoyed. One of them in particular, I remember for my confirmation when I was 12. I remember getting 2 games with my confirmation money in Toy Master in town, and I got it was like a ninja game, but you were fighting like loads of demons and stuff. But it was cool. It was called Ken Sidon, and then there was another game
that's
called.
That's the name I had in my head. I was ready to say it.
And then there was a. Do you remember Captain?
I was ready to say it.
And then there was Captain Silver. Captain Silver was shorter, but it was a tougher game. But that was pretty cool. It was slow paced. Well, actually, they were both slow paced. But the one thing that Ken Sidon did, it had great graphics for a Master System games. But it was one cool thing. It had kind of like RPG elements where it wasn't straightforward. You could travel to different maps and play different levels at different times. But what happened is you'd have to unlock different features to get into other areas in the maps. And there was some hidden levels as well that you could only gain access to once you'd done specific things in the game that wouldn't appear until you had done them, until later in the game. So once you upgraded your weapons, like you could, it kind of reminded me a little bit like Exhumed on the PlayStation. When you got the different kind of like ornaments, they gave you different abilities, like to jump higher, you'd be stronger and stuff. Yeah. This game was like that as well, but like you were like it was like 2D, but you were a samurai. You'd get like a stronger sword, or you could jump higher, you could run fast, or you could do more.
Upgrade.
Yeah, and you could do different sword moves once you got different like abilities and stuff. But you'd only get certain abilities from fighting certain bosses, and some of the bosses you can only fight on hidden levels, but you couldn't find them straight away until sometimes you'd overlook them. You had to do specific things in the game, so there was so much replayability in it, which was awesome. I remember I loved that game. That game was brilliant. It was tough. It was tough as hell. I remember you enjoyed it as well, Steve. Well, me and you used to play that for a good bit. Yeah,
I loved it.
That for me was one of the best games. Yeah.
See that replayability? It was games like that where I know there's progression.
Yeah, because you could.
It's not just where you just play a game, you complete a couple of levels. And that's it. Games where you say, right, I can upgrade my armor, I can upgrade my moves, I can upgrade my weapons. Yeah, to progress in the game. Yeah, I love all that.
The game itself, because the game allowed you to explore. You could go inside of buildings to explore different rooms, and you could go in to try and find like hidden extra lives. And there was even hidden rooms. I remember those particular rooms you could go in. There was all these kind of like Japanese Oriental statues, and I remember in particular you jump to the top of them and you press up on the controller, and there was always a hidden room there that would take you into something else to find like a hidden life or a hidden like potion or something that could revive you if you lost all of your hit points. That you'd automatically it was just through trial and error that I found them. And there was a couple of times I remember getting a loan. I think it was one time I got a loan of a magazine off someone in class in school that had played the game, and they actually had told me that there was a couple of hidden secrets in the game, so I went back and played it and found them. So I was like, sweet, even more chance to play the game. But yeah, for me, the Master System holds a really dear place for me, like it just because it was the first console like that we had ever owned, and there was so many games that we played on it. And now we didn't have a Nintendo. I didn't get to play really the Nintendo till a couple of years later. It was actually one of our cousins I had the Nintendo and got to play Super Mario on it. But I think I played Super Mario. He had Super Mario Brothers 3, but I remember playing Diggs. You had the Super Nintendo. I remember playing Super Mario Brothers 3 on the SNES before I played it on the original Nintendo, because I remember the graphics were very different. Like the music and all that was quirky, but the colour palette was very different because the SNES obviously had brighter colours. It was still pretty cool. It played just like it. That was the thing. It just the graphics were just not. They were just different.
But the gameplay, as you said, the replayability. It did something different to the original games you did play. It was just level after level. Doing the same kind of thing.
I'm thinking back. There was another game as well that our dad used to play as well, and it was the two golf games. We did have a PGA Tour World Tour golf game, and he used to play that a lot. Now I tried playing it, and I always found it very slow paced. You and even Diggs, Steve-O, the two of you used to play it because you were always more into golf.
I'm trying to remember that game.
Yeah,
I'm trying. What was it called? Remember myself.
It was just PGA Tour golf on the Master System.
That
wasn't Jack Nicklaus or anything like that. No.
I can't remember, but all I know is it was
split screen.
Yeah, you could see when you hit the ball.
See the golfer hitting the ball, and then you could see where the ball was traveling.
It was almost like it had a 3D feel to it.
Yeah. I remember it. I do remember.
Now
I do like the darts.
Yeah.
Where you see the person throwing it, and then you see where the dart's actually hitting on the board. That's kind of that one. The way that one was.
I will admit I didn't enjoy that one as much. Again, sports games. I did enjoy sports games, but I wasn't really into them as much. The first golf game
was because you didn't enjoy it because that was more like a PGA game.
Yeah, it's more realistic.
It's endorsed by
Yeah.
PGA. It's where we played the other one.
For me it was slow paced, and I wasn't really a big fan of slow paced games. Anything that moved slower than you could move, I was like, no. But the first game that I allowed myself to play that I really loved was that Sega World Tournament Golf. I do remember actually once I allowed myself to sit down and play with it, I sat for hours with you playing it too. Remember we used to always play the skins mode. Yeah, we playing for money. Yeah, to see who could get the biggest pot or who could win the pot, and that was brilliant. I remember actually there was times that Diggs, you were over in the house and it was myself, yourself, Steve-O and my dad, the four of us sit playing it for hours. So we
I loved it.
Yeah.
I just, talking about that game, there was something about those old 8-bit and even some of the 16-bit golf games that, the camera view was top-down view, like the old GTA 1. Like, it was just so simplistic. It was so easy to play and enjoyable to play. I think, like when you think of that PGA Tour golf, like you say, like there were certain golf games come out, like, and you were sort of like a third-person perspective, and like they were so difficult to play because I had to draw the level in front of you. Hit the ball and it just, it was like, all right, give me the Sega World Tournament Golf back. It was so quick and easy to play.
Yeah. But that's what it was. Like, you think of Sega World Tournament Golf, you could have 18 holes done in, half an hour. 45 minutes. Where if you had to go to the PGA one, it could take a couple of hours.
Yeah, going back to I'm not going to go too much more into the Masters because I think that it's a topic that it could go on and on and on. But I just do want to briefly mention one of the games that I did have. I remember getting the Streets of Rage 2 game on the Masters, and it was the Master System version I had. Now I had originally played the original Streets of Rage 2 on the Mega Drive. I remember you got it at one point, and I remember being addicted to it. I remember then later on going down to our other mate's house. One summer, it was the summer of '95. It was around the time the Mortal Kombat movie had actually come out in the cinema. Because he had Mortal Kombat 2 in the house on the Mega Drive, and he had Streets of Rage 2. And I remember myself and yourself, Steve-O, we used to go down to the house during the summer when he used to live down the road. And I remember we'd be up in the room, and we'd always be playing between Streets of Rage 2 or Mortal Kombat 2. But then I remember getting Streets of Rage 2 on the Master System. I liked it. It's not a patch on the Mega Drive version. The Mega Drive version for me is one of my top 10 favourite games of all time.
Yeah,
actually,
version,
it could actually be even considered to be my top 5 because I listen to the Streets of Rage 2 soundtrack or even different variations or remixes of it all the time. I love that game and I love the soundtrack of that game. Like I was going back to earlier on, I agree. I love soundtracks in games. That's one of my best memories of games in general. I love games music more than as much as I love playing the games. Yeah, I just love games music, and that was for me. And I remember when I got the Master System version, one of the first things I did was I wanted to compare, say when I listened to something that I liked, the Mega Drive version of the soundtrack of Streets of Rage 2 is one of the best soundtracks I've ever heard, and I can still remember every beat, every little detail of each tune that was on it, and I wanted to compare it to the Master System. I was slightly disappointed because I suppose the expectations, you can never expect to be too high because it's a totally different version, but it was still really good for the Master System. Like it actually excelled itself. It was actually way beyond what I'd expected. Now I played the second game before I remember playing Streets of Rage 1 on the Master System a few years later, and again it wasn't as good. It was a lot slower, but Streets of Rage 2 was 10 times faster. It was even faster than the Mega Drive version, but it was also 10 times tougher, even on the easiest difficulty. Man, that game was hard. The only thing that was annoying about that game, if you remember, Steve, you couldn't play 2-player on it. It was a 1-player only game.
It was 1-player, That's what annoyed me.
That's what really bugged the hell out of me, because I would have loved to play with the lads like we used to do with the Mega Drive games. That was the best part of it, was playing co-op, and you couldn't do it on the Master System version. And that was the bit that I found the most disappointing. But it didn't take away from the game. I still really enjoyed it. It was a fun game. It's not as good as the Mega Drive one, we all know that, but it took a lot of trial and error. But again, me being me, I was persistent with it, and I did manage to finish it, and I played that a ton. I remember.
The question I would ask is, why did they not make it 2-player? Is it because they couldn't, or they just couldn't be bothered?
I don't know. I used to often think that myself. I don't know whether it was down
3 characters to choose from.
You see,
no, sorry, you 4.
Well, you 4, but
Blade,
but on the Master System, you didn't have
Max.
Max. Yeah, but Max wasn't in the Master System one.
Max,
You only had Skate, Axel, and Blaze.
Blade, and Axel. Yeah.
Yeah. So you see, there was a lot of
Even
stuff
with
that was taken
3
out.
players. You still could have played 2 player.
Yeah.
No problem.
Well, I don't know whether it was due to the.
I don't know. Is it the limitations of the Master System?
It could have been. It could have been.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. The limitations of the console.
Even at that game, because like we know how visually good it was in the Mega Drive. It is one of the best looking games on the Mega Drive. So the Master System had actually even graphically, right, there was better looking games in the Master System, but even at that, it was still a groundbreaking game to have on the Master System. The fact is it could play at such a speed that it played at, and the fact is it had so much there, and it did have a really good soundtrack for a Master System game as well. So I suppose there was only certain things they could do with it. But I often wondered that myself.
I was so hyped. Well, as you said, the soundtrack and everything. The soundtrack to me just wasn't there on the Master System because it's a weaker console. But the hype was there. Yeah, going it's coming out in the Master System. So that's the old console we had when people had Mega Drives and whatever was bigger computers.
Yeah,
but this is what we had, and all of a sudden Streets of Rage was coming out because obviously we had a taste of it on the upper consoles.
Yeah,
which was your Mega Drive, whatever. And then when it came out, the Master System was all we had. And we went, yeah. But to me, enjoyed it. But one player, a soundtrack. It's a weaker computer. So, but don't get me wrong, it didn't take away from the game itself. You know what I mean? It was just the computer had limitations and it could only play what it could play, and that was it back in the day. You know what I mean? Like, we weren't at 16 bits; we were only at 8.
I remember. The only thing I'm kind of kicking myself now because I remember when I was moving house out to where I'm out here now, and I remember I actually had to get rid of my old the Master System and a load of those old games. The Streets of Rage was one of them, and didn't get much for it because again I know where to put it. I just ended up having to get rid of it. So back then games weren't to what they are today in terms of what they're worth.
Yeah.
If I had kept my copy of Streets of Rage 2, and again it was in almost pristine condition, it was really in good condition because we always looked after our games. Like if you look on eBay now, I was looking at it recently, Streets of Rage 2 for the Master System, minimum 200-300 quid. That is insane. And I only paid like £15 for it back when I was about 12.
Even 15 Irish pounds was a lot of money.
Yeah, it's like mad.
Inflation.
Streets of Rage. Streets of Rage, where would that rank in your gaming memories?
Oh wow, well.
I don't think you didn't play. I don't think you played it on the Master System as much. I don't think you. No.
And I'm struggling to remember even the Master System version.
Yeah.
But no, in terms of Streets of Rage. Well, the first one I played was Streets of Rage 2, and that was on the Mega Drive.
Yeah.
And I mean that game was incredible.
And
I'm going to echo what Peter said about the soundtrack. It was a total package, that game.
Yeah.
It had gameplay, it was fun, awesome soundtrack, the longevity of it was good too, you know. Yeah. And it was just amazing. I just loved every bit of that. In terms of the 16-bit era, it's definitely in my top 5.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. When I'm thinking about it now, just before we do wrap things up, there is a couple of other games on the Master System that I do quickly want to mention. And Steve, will you remember one of them? Well, one that we have, and I've only been playing it only recently. I downloaded the updated version on the PlayStation 5. Is Alex Kidd in Miracle World? That is hands down for me one of the best Master System games ever. That I'm actually, you know, I was kicking myself I didn't mention it earlier because Diggs, you actually bought a Master System some years later. I remember you bought it just for that game.
The rock paper scissors?
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember.
And that, you know, the thing about Alex Kidd has such an impact on me is again that it's the only game to make me go back a generation.
Yeah.
I had a Mega Drive at the time, and when I played it on the Master System in a friend's house, I thought I have to go back a generation just to play this game.
Yeah, because I remember we had it.
It was brilliant.
Because I remember
I thought it was right up there with Mario.
Oh yeah,
I thought it's good as Mario.
We got because we got our second Master System. It was actually Damien that got it for Christmas one year, and Alex Kidd was built into it. And I remember you coming over,
exactly,
and you were addicted to it. I'd never seen you play wanting to play a Master System game as much apart from Sega World Tournament Golf.
See, I played it prior. You guys having it, and I played it in a friend's house, and I was totally addicted. As I said, I had a Mega Drive, but this friend's house I went round to, they only had a Master System too, and Alex Kidd was built into the system, and we were playing, it was summertime, playing on the street, playing football, playing tag, all those things, and in my mind a whole day was like, I just need to get into this house and play that game one more time.
Because funny enough, the very first experience I ever had with Alex Kidd was actually, funny enough, was actually a woman that my mum used to work with. Like, she's no longer with us, she passed away a few years ago, but it was actually, do you remember Steve-O, our mate?
I do.
He took us round because this woman was cousins of his, and she actually had a Master System in her house in the kitchen, and we went round one day and she let us play in the Master System in the kitchen. I remember Alex Kidd, it was the only game they had on it, and she let us play it, and I remember just thinking it was awesome. That was the first time I'd ever played it, and it was like, wow. And got Alex Kidd on it, and we were all hooked, because I remember when you got Joe one to play it, and I also remember you got Outrun for it as well, for the Master System, and the Master System version of Outrun is really cool as well. Funny enough, I was playing that version only recently as well, a couple of months ago, and it's a cool game. It's for a Master System game, it's a really cool game, so it is. And it's a really good soundtrack as well for an 8-bit console. It's actually got one of the best soundtracks on the Master System, so it does. It is really, really good, and it's just got that really nice, fluent gameplay for a racing game. It's definitely one of the best.
Are actually coming, what would you say, humming in my head.
Yeah, it's fun times.
I loved Outrun. Outrun was an amazing game.
There's one more game. Now there's a load of other games. I remember there was a couple of other Alex Kidd and Shinobi World was another great one as well.
I remember.
It was like that was brilliant. It was short, but that was brilliant as well. Not as good as Miracle World, but it was really, really good. There was a couple of other ones. Remember there was another one that High Tech World, and it wasn't as good.
I remember playing them and thinking, this is not what I was expecting.
I do remember getting to play. Remember we were talking about this recently with Bart versus the Space Mutants of Simpsons, and that game. And I do remember finishing it, but Jesus, that game was a mess. Like those games weren't great, but at the end you found yourself playing them. There was a couple of other games I remember. Actually, I can't remember them off the top of my head, but there was a couple of other games that were similar to it that we played that were like that. Oh, another game that I had in the Master System as well. There's two. Well, there was one that I didn't have. I got a loan of it. It's one of the best games on the Master System, but I want to talk about just Moonwalker. Michael Jackson's Moonwalker.
Yeah.
That was brilliant. That was absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. Playing the tunes, and when you held up on the controller, he's going to do a special move, and he started doing a twist, and he started doing his dance, and then he did the Smooth Criminal tune, and then everybody, and then you wipe everybody out on the screen. So if you had all enemies on the screen, they would
have a special attack.
Yeah. So once
are you okay? Any?
Yeah. So when you done the special move and he done his dance, the screen would go black, and then everybody that was on the screen, all the enemies disappeared. Because I remember you used to go searching for to save kids or people, and you had and look for extra lives. You had to search. There was loads of different levels. You had to search through different doors, or you'd be in a car park level. You had to search boots of cars, or trunks of cars.
Every time you want to say you search a trunk, it'd come up like a ting, and then you just do a twist.
Yeah, there was even one level you were in a graveyard where you were searching hedges and gravestones for kids, and you were
doing a 360.
You were trying to fight off zombies as well. That was mental.
And then you could just take the hat off your head and just shoot it at the enemies.
If you could punch and kick them, but you could if you got a hat upgrade, you could shoot.
Or you could duck down and just shoot your hat off.
Was the hat like a boomerang effect?
Yeah, it was kind of like a boomerang effect. It would always come back to you. Even aside from that, one more game there was a couple of other games I remember playing years later. It was a couple of the Wonder Boy games. Now I didn't play Monster. There was 4 actually in the Master System. There was Wonder Boy. I had that one. There was the second one. There was Wonder Boy Monster Land, and then there was Wonder Boy 3: The Dragon's Trap. But then there was another one after. I remember when I was in secondary school, there was a lad in my class that had Wonder Boy and Monster World. That was a brilliant game. That was a really good game. But the best Wonder Boy game I ever played, and it's one of the best games on the Master System even to this day, is Wonder Boy 3: The Dragon's Trap. That game is sheer perfection.
I know a lot of people that talk about that game too.
It was so many. Before you said it, Wonder Boy 3.
It had a mixture of different styles. It had RPG, it had platforming, and the fact is the level designs were so intricate because each time you got through a certain point, you changed into a different character, and you were limited to the things you could do. But you had to go into a level that was specific to that character in order to unlock the next character to go to their level. Because there was a wee level where you played as a wee kind of scrawny little dwarf or midget character, but you could only get into the wee gaps, and he could climb up walls. He only he could get into. Other characters couldn't get into. That game was awesome. There was so much value in that game, and the fact is,
there's so much replayability in that game.
And then you could.
You say what you're saying.
That
Brilliant.
If you wanted a game for pure all-out fun and exploration, now mind you, it was tough. That game was it. That game was, for me, hands down, one of my favourite games. That game is one of the top games, and I know, like you said, Diggs, that game is talked about a lot, and I agree with it because it really is one of the best games ever on the Master System. Yeah.
You know, do you know it was remade, right? Did any of you go for it?
No, I seen it on the PlayStation Store. I must check it out someday when I get a chance.
Yeah.
What, is it remade?
There's a new version.
It's available. It's available on PlayStation 4, Xbox One. Yeah, it's even available on the mobile platforms. You know, iOS. And
Look at that.
I'll have to revisit that because that was. There was another couple of games as well.
This is going to be the story of this podcast.
I know.
There was another game.
There's actually the funny thing is, it's only now that I'm thinking of it. There was because we had nearly 40 games, and then that wasn't including all the games we got loaned over that we played in mates' houses or vice versa. There was 2 games we actually did have. There was one I bought. It was Bram Stoker's Dracula. That was really good. But then there was another one I got on the Master System. Yeah, and it was really good. But there was one game that we had. It was actually a cousin of ours that had it. I remember my auntie actually gave it to us because he wasn't playing it anymore since Peter Lees can have it. It was Master of Darkness. Do you remember that one? It was that was a brilliant game. It played very like Castlevania. It had a very Castlevania vibe to it. That game was phenomenal. I was actually only playing that last week because I'm working on a project on my other channel, and I'm going to be using that as kind of like an intro piece going back to talking about bits and pieces. And I was actually playing Master of Darkness the other day, and I was like, whoa, this game's cool. It's still as good as I remember. It's very dark and atmospheric. So it is. For a Master System game, it was one of the very few games for me that could actually get that survival horror kind of style vibe, even though it was hard to do back then. But it was one of the games that could do it.
It was very kind of like Castlevania, was it?
It was very like Castlevania. Yeah, it played very like the early Castlevania games.
Yeah,
so it was.
As soon as you said the name,
you did play it, and I remember you playing in our house one time. I think we actually gave it a loan to you, and you really enjoyed it. You really liked it. I remember you thought it was really good.
Yeah. It's definitely it's just that you said it there and then, and I'm like, wow, yes, I remember that now.
That for me is it's kind of like a mix of Castlevania, but it also has a slight kind of like Nightmare Creatures vibe to it, like from the PlayStation.
Well, it's gothic, right?
It's gothic, yeah. It has a whole gothic tone to it, and for me, that was definitely one of the best games on the Master System, and visually it was one of the best games on the Master System as well. Graphically, it was phenomenal for the game, for what it could do. It was atmospheric, great graphics, great soundtrack, and it just.
I'm going to check this out tomorrow on YouTube for sure.
Yeah, you should, because I was only playing it there only the other day, and I've forgotten how good the game is. I'd love to go and just sit down and play it again. If I get time, I might do it over the weekend. Who knows? But I just, I could talk about the Master System all day, like I could with a lot of other consoles, because we all can, because we all grew up with it. Like even Diggs, you lived across the street from us, you practically live in our house. You remember it just as much as we do, because you sat and played the games with us. And there was so many great memories. And the funny thing is, like, I know, like, when you think of it, everybody else, like most other people had Mega Drives. We couldn't afford a Mega Drive. But the one cool thing about the Master System was it didn't really matter what type of console you had. You had a console, you had the opportunity to play games, you made the most of what you had. And for me personally, and I'm sure that you agree, the Master System presented us with some of the best memories we've ever had in gaming. Hands down, it really did. Like, it absolutely did. And I cannot, I can't say enough about it. Like, and I would still go back to play. I was like I said the other day, I was still going back and playing some of the games, and for me they're just as good as I remember. So for me, it's definitely a thing that So that's to say, like, do you have anything else to add to yourselves, like, for just before we wrap up, because we have gone on for quite a bit.
No, I think we've extensively covered everything.
I know myself. I could probably go on more, because there is a lot more. I just haven't thought of it, but I'm sure it'll come to mind. But I can leave that for another day.
The Master System
there is
that we haven't talked about.
Yeah,
and there is, but that's for another episode.
That's it. Yeah, because I'm sure that there's more ideas and there's more stuff that we can talk about. We can save that for future episodes.
And a lot more know that other people can relate to as well.
Yeah.
As long as, along with ourselves.
Yeah.
There's games that we haven't played that other people have played. There's games that we played and people are going, oh, I never knew that existed.
Absolutely.
Didn't even know
Absolutely.
that was
Exactly,
that
like
was
just
about, you know what
just when Peter mentioned Master of Darkness,
Yeah.
you know, I understood what he said, and I was like, wait, no, I don't remember instantly what the game was, so I had to go straight to YouTube. And
Yeah.
I'm like, yes,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
remember
you remember it then.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the House of the Wax Dolls.
Yeah.
Remember that level?
Yeah. Oh yeah, that level. Yeah. That's to say, it had so many cool themes to it.
Yeah.
That's what was really good about the game.
The floating faces.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, it was just, and it did have creepy vibes for it in the game. Like it was
good,
creepy.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
it was definitely one of the.
The highlight reels of the Master System for me, like it just definitely. I like it for me. It goes down as for me personally, one of the best consoles ever. I know, like when you compare it to like the NES, and the Nintendo was always the big console, but the Master System was a hidden gem. It had and still has some of the best games ever on that console.
Yeah, I agree.
So people that have grew up with the Master System like ourselves would know that. But to a lot of people, the people out there, even people that's listening, there's a lot of games on that console that I do think that is worth revisiting or even just experiencing for the first time. Especially if you like those older aesthetics and retro games. There's some games there that you'll be just completely blown away by, and you'll be just shocked with how good they are to that degree. Like, so I do highly recommend that people check them out, because I know even by talking this, it's got me excited now to go back and play a lot of the games again, which I do intend to do now. So yeah.
You think about it in the next episode, you can let everybody know.
That's it. I'll be sure here at the end of the day, this isn't the end of the Master System topic. We will share snippets here and there whenever we think of stuff in future things, because we can always relate back. There's always something that's going to creep up. There's always something that's going to come up every so often. Because I know myself, I haven't remembered everything that I have. I know I remember a lot of stuff, but there's a lot of stuff that is there. It just hasn't come to my mind at first yet, but I know it will in time. But sure, we'll leave that till another day, as I say.
Yeah, done
for sure.
that in the next episode.
That's it. So yeah, I think for talk's sake, I think we've kind of talked ourselves to the bone with this one. With this being the first episode, like, to be honest, I had a blast. I'm sure you guys did as well. It was great to go down memory lane, to kind of go back to where it all started. And again, there's still more to discuss, but like I said, we can do it again. We can talk about it later on and bring up bits and pieces as and when things come up, which I know we will, because there's not going to be any issue with us talking. Like, we've talked for nearly 2.5 hours here, and yeah, if I don't cut it off now, it'll never stop. Let's just put it that way. We have to save something else for another day, definitely. So we're just going to wrap things up here, and I appreciate everybody joining in and listening to the podcast. And just to give you an update, that on the next episode we are going to be moving on to the next stage of the 16-bit era of consoles, primarily with the likes of the Mega Drive and the Super Nintendo, because we do have a lot to talk about on those consoles as well, equally as much as we've talked about today with the Master.
Probably even more.
Probably even more. Yeah, because we have a lot of funny stories to share, because there was a lot of hair-raising moments, a lot of silly moments, so just laugh out loud giggles, let's just put it that way. So yeah, make sure to keep an eye out for that. We'll definitely have you covered on that one. There's going to be a lot of funny moments in that for sure. Anyway, this is us signing off, so just want to let you know just where we can find everybody. So Diggs, just like to know, just to kind of let people know where they can find you if they want to get talking to you and stuff online.
No, you can get me on PlayStation Network. My username is Digvoldi, capital DIGVOLDI. I also have a Twitter account where it's at Digvoldi_PSN, and also my Instagram account is also Digvoldi. So
happy days.
Yeah, you can get me there.
Happy days. And Steve-O, where can people find you?
Yeah, you can catch me on my PSN network at StevoBorn83, which is lowercase STEVEO_Born BYRNE_83.
Nice one. And yeah, just to like wrap things up, even for myself, if many of you may not know, I'm sure some of you might and some of you mightn't, I myself personally do run a couple of YouTube channels with retro gaming. I cover a lot of like PlayStation stuff. I have a lot of other projects that I want to do, but it's just finding the time to do them, but you never know, maybe in time. But at the minute, like, I'm currently working on 2 channels, so you can find me on YouTube at PSX Gaming Memories, or on my second channel, PS2 Gaming Memories. Now, they're both relatable. If you've watched them, you'll know. But at the same time, you can also get me on Twitter and Instagram. So you can find me at PSX Memories on Twitter, and then PSX Gaming Memories on Instagram if you want to know more. So I do try to post up there as often as I can. So I do be as active, and I'm literally on YouTube all the time. Like, I've been always working away, doing videos and doing bits and pieces, and I'll be interacting with the community. So if you have any questions or anything at all that you just want to know more about, even more about backgrounds of our game, and be sure to get in touch with all of us, and we can answer any questions and vice versa. So that's it, wrapping up for this episode of the podcast. Again, it was a long one. There was a lot to talk about. To be honest, there's a lot more to talk about, but we just will save that for another day because we could go on all day. But again, we don't want to give too much away, as I say. So that's us for now. We're just signing out. But until next time, make sure to keep watching out, because we will be sharing more gaming memories and stories and funny moments. And next time we'll be talking about consoles and games from the 16-bit era. Be sure to check them out. For this, I'm Peter, and we're signing off. And until next time, make sure to keep playing those games and to make sure to keep it casual.
Bye bye.
Bye bye. See yous.